You bring your phone everywhere. Work, school, the movies. Now you can bring it to an Xfinity store for an easy way to switch to Xfinity Mobile, a new kind of network designed to save you money. You can get up to 5 lines of talk and text included with Xfinity Internet at no extra cost, so all you pay for is data. It's never been easier to switch to Xfinity Mobile and keep the phone you love. Click here to see how. Sorry, I gotta take this. Restrictions apply. Limited to select mobile phones. Requires activation of a new line of Xfinity Mobile. Up to 5 devices per account. New Xfinity Internet customers limited to up to 2 lines pending activation of Internet service.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I am your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, Patricia Kirkman, PK. You're freezing in Tucson. Oh, my God.
Yes, I am. Well, I have a double sweater on. Does that say something?
It says a lot. That's very
Definitely.
usual for Tucson.
I know
Yes.
it, especially for me. But somebody made me shut my heat down.
I know. We won't mention any names.
No, Joe, we won't talk about you.
Well, I know you're going to tough it out for the next 90 minutes, and we have a great show. What a terrific guest. Oh, my God. We're going to heaven tonight.
Yes,
we are going to heaven with Robert Kopecky, and he's got a great book, How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. Is that a great title?
I love it. I like the idea of doing it without
dying. I know it.
I kind of like my feet on the ground sometimes.
But we are going to hear all about Robert's wisdom, all about his experience. He's had 3 near-death experiences. My God. So we're going to bring him on in just a little while. But first, we got to check with you on the numbers. What is happening?
Well, we talk about the numbers all the time, so I thought I'd do something a little different this time. And for those that are interested, they can send me the first letter of their name, which was what we're going to talk about, and I will give them a brief of what it's about. So, but really what it is, it's a cornerstone. Excuse me, the numerology letter represents what a person's approach to life is and their experiences. But the first letter of your first name is called a cornerstone, and it determines to a large part your life approach and opportunities and obstacles. So if the first name is different from the name on your birth certificate, use your birth certificate first name. All you have to do is look at the first letter. You get a chance to see how life is viewed. No one is approaching life's ups and downs any better than any other way without looking at that, what I call the cornerstone number. And so kind of give you a brief description, I thought we would do Robert's first letter since it's an R.
Okay, it's an R.
Yeah. So according to this, there is an emotional approach of life that's high, determination, inner strength. Things are felt very strongly by him, although he tends to be kind. Tolerant at times can be lacking. Does that fit you, Robert?
Right up until the end, I think it does.
We'll put that one on hold.
Past that other limitation.
But it's just a one letter to be able to give you that information of how you would take an approach to things. And with Joe goes through life with self-determination, prefers self-reliance instead of relying on others. That we do know. Joe has a leadership role that appeals to him, and he tends to be talented and very ingenious. Joe, I know, will agree to that one.
Well, that's all true.
Yes.
I know that's true. Yes.
And, of course, the P for Patricia and myself is PK. Spiritual, metaphysical, philosophical approach to life. Likely to be highly intelligent. I like that part.
God, yes.
Action is desired. Impatient tends to be experienced from time to time.
Oh, yes.
Not in mine, but in yours, Patricia.
Definitely in my case. I will own the impatience.
So this just gives you a brief idea of how you can look at numbers, because no one approaches life in the same way. And although many of us have the same name, it's the plus and minuses that go with it. So I thought a little different approach tonight.
That's
and if
so
anybody wants to know what their first letter is, email me and I'll send it back.
All right. So you can email PK. She is on our website. You can just click right underneath her beautiful photo on the homepage, and you can send your first letter of your first name to PK, and she'll tell you what it means. Yeah. So how about that? Another gift. You know, we had a great show last week, I got to say. That prayer show was tremendous. We had a lot of really great feedback from everybody on different things that happened, different things they felt throughout when we were sending the energy out to specific people and to our entire audience. We're going to do it again. So if people have prayer requests, you can, again, email us your prayer requests, and PK will look at your name and your birth date for you and give you insight. We'll have George back to give you his insight from the other side, and then we'll do prayers for you once again. But it was just tremendously successful. People were really pleased with how they felt during that prayer circle and after. So we're going to be reading some letters from people next time to let you know how things have progressed for them. So it was a very powerful hour and a half, and we plan on continuing to give back to our audience. So we'll be doing it another time. Just make sure you send us what your needs are so we can answer and for you and have those prayers sent.
And
so
it is
I
all
want to share
personal and private, so they know that we will not.
Yes.
Okay.
We're not going to divulge their full names or anything like that on the air. So, yes. So, anyways, I got to share this story because we're going to be talking about near-death experiences. And I have to tell you that last night I had a very funny dream about my college roommate who passed away last year very unexpectedly. And her name is Joyce. And I, in my dream, had this message from her, this voice message on my phone. I was like, oh my God, Joyce is calling me. This is amazing. So I went to reach out to her, and suddenly she was just there. And she said to me, very, very cranky, she said, "There's no food here." Like, what do you mean there's no? She said, "There is no food here." She said, "I got 2 meals, one when I first got here and one celebratory meal, and that was it." Now, I called her husband today, and I said, "Craig, I had this dream about Joyce last night, and I have to share it with you because it's kind of funny." And he said to me, "Patricia, that is so Joyce, because Joyce was obsessed with food." He said she would go out to the store. She's like, "I'm going to the store and I'm going to get some milk." He said she'd come back with bags of groceries. He said, "I have things in our pantry that Joyce bought. I have no idea what the heck they are." But that was Joyce. She was totally, totally into food. And I thought, what a perfect dream to have about her. I really felt so warm inside that I had that connection with her. She was her typical self. And I said to her husband, I said, "She's the same over there as she was here." Exactly the same.
And that's what they say transpires, which is nice to know with validation.
It's so nice to know. And because I said, she was grumpy about it, and she never really got angry, but she would get kind of like, peeved. And that's how she was, that there wasn't any food over there. So anyways, it was a real gift to see her in that dream last night. I really miss her, and I was very shocked by her sudden passing, as was everybody. So anyways, it's a definite loss for Craig and his children, and for me as her friend. But it was great to see her in that dream. So I want to encourage everybody, please keep track of your dreams. Pay attention to your dreams, because you may reconnect with someone who has passed to the other side. You certainly will have that opportunity to have a conversation with them and connect one more time, or more than one more time, if you just open yourself to that channel of dreams. So highly recommend that one. It's also, now, another thing. You saw the paranormal news that I posted on our Facebook page. Very important, because these poor abductees, these witnesses to UFOs are still being harassed. I mean, this continues to this day. And it's so wrong. It's so wrong. And this was an article that we posted on our Facebook page about a gentleman in the UK who just backed out of everything because he was so horrified by the fact that his phone was being tapped, that he was being followed, that all of these things were happening to him just simply based on the fact that he had reported some things that he saw and experienced. Yeah. Now, with this horrible tragedy that happened last week, and the FBI embarrassing itself, I'm sure other agencies are involved as well. Yes. Don't you think, I mean, that they should start spending some time on the important stuff and leave these UFO abductees and witnesses alone? I mean, it's about time.
I would think so.
Focus on what's important, do their job, and leave these people who are just telling their truth, leave them alone. Let them tell their truth. I know, but it should.
I know it should, but they're so fearful of truth being, as they say, false news, fake news has been everything for so long. It didn't just start. It's been going on for years. Yes, we have different abductions and such, but the government agreed, no, that none of this ever happened, except talk to the people that have been there.
Yes. Well, it's a very excuse me, a very painful experience when these abductees and these witnesses come forward. And not only are they harangued by people who think that this is nonsense, but what's even worse is that they're followed, their phones are tapped, their computers are broken into. I mean, all of this has been documented, and it's highly unfair. So again, we've always taken a stand on this show for people that come out and share their paranormal experiences. They need to be treated with respect and with love. Open your hearts, everybody. And again, all these agencies need to be doing something else, not harassing people who are coming forward with paranormal experiences. So that's a great story. It's on our Facebook page. Take a look. We have other mysterious stories there as well. So it's at Supernatural Girls with a Z on Facebook. Make sure you follow us so that you can keep up with everything we're into and everything we're doing. So we've got one great show after another, and tonight is a very special show. Because as we said, we're going to heaven tonight with Robert Kopecky. He has written a terrific book called How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. And we have him here with us. So Robert, welcome to the show.
Hi, ladies. Thank you very much for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Our pleasure.
Yes.
Our pleasure, for sure.
Now, let's get right into this, Robert. You've had a fascinating life, just absolutely fascinating. And you've had 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 near-death experiences.
I have, and the main thing that I've learned and that I have to pass on to your listeners or viewers is don't do it. Don't have 3 near-death experiences. Avoid it if at all possible. What happens in a near-death experience is amazing and can be amazing and wonderful for certain. The circumstances around them, though, are generally not all that great. You know, that just kind of goes with the territory. But I didn't plan it, and it's kind of overkill to have had, like literally overkill kind of to have had 3 near-death experiences. But, you know, they were near death, so I'm here to tell you about them tonight.
Thank goodness. Now, you also, in reading your book, you also talked briefly about being born into a very traumatic family as well. So that's a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, I had a difficult childhood, and I would have to say that the sort of spiritual or even paranormal aspect of it started for me fairly early because the regular world, the adult world, did not work all that well around me. You know, there were adults being in inappropriate ways and stuff when I was a kid, and so I used to go out into the backyard and look at the stars and wonder if there was some answer there. You know, I had this is an interesting story. We were talking about stories a little while ago, but when I was in my mid to late 20s, I was at a holiday dinner at my mom's house. And I told this story to the dinner crowd about how my brother had these 2 imaginary friends named Condi and Pondi. that he played with in the backyard.
Oh my.
And they showed him strange things. They showed him scenes of like surreal worlds and animals that were put together that he'd never seen before and stuff like that. They were twins. They had big black eyes and they were blue or dressed in blue. And I told this story. And my mom said, well, that's a really interesting story, and it's true. But it wasn't your brother. It was you.
Yeah.
Oh,
my goodness.
You played with Condi and Pondi. And around the same time, my dad, who had a business in downtown San Diego, used to have an elderly Mexican Indian guy named Arturo who visited his yard. And Arturo spoke often about taking trips on flying saucers and the star people that he knew. And he was a special friend of mine. And so as far as I know, I may have some kind of connection to the stars that I developed when I was just a child, kind of as an alternative to the difficult childhood that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it sounds like it gave you, an escape, but also some comfort that there was something else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's the thing about near-death experiences too, because I had 3 completely different ones. I've heard hundreds of them now over the last few years since my first book came out, which was How to Survive Life and Death, where I first told the stories. And the fact that they're all different leads me to believe that there is an aspect of absolute potential, that anything can happen. And it's the same kind of place that we might go to in our dreams, or that we might go to when we are really using our imaginations, And there's always a kind of a pattern recognition where we are able to recognize, I was always myself. I could always see out of my eyes in my near-death experiences. But the situations could be anything, really. And so the nature of the near-death experiences is in many ways, I think, imaginary, not in that people are making them up, but in that when we enter into our next iteration, into our next incarnation, all kinds of things become possible. It's like all bets are off. We are loosened from the human form, and then by being that, we're able to expand into all kinds of possibilities, all kinds of worlds. That's what I feel like they're like.
Wow.
Interesting.
Now, tell us, because I know our audience is really very fascinated with near-death experiences. What happened in your first one? What caused this?
The first one was my 3 are really kind of classic motifs. The first one is an out-of-body experience where I was driving in a car. It was in the evening. I was on an unfamiliar road, and this will date it. This will tell you about what period of time it was in, but my cassette player messed up, right? and so I pulled the tape out, and it had caught the tape, and it was this long string that I pulled out. And right then I glanced off of an oddly parked car and went straight into a telephone pole. Just boom. I was probably going about 35 miles an hour or so, I would guess. But I smashed out the windshield with my head, even though I had a seatbelt on.
Oh my!
Broke the steering wheel and stuff. But in the next instant, I was at the top of the telephone pole. I was next to the street light, and there were moths flying around it. And I looked down and saw the car smashed into the pole, and sort of fluid running onto the ground, and somebody with their arm hanging out the window and the smashed windshield. I could look over bushes and hedges into people's yards in this neighborhood, and lights were going on back porches, and people were running out responding to the sounds that they'd heard. And they said, call an ambulance, it looks bad, and the people ran out. And I was watching this whole thing from up there and realizing that the person that was kind of hanging out of the car was me. And that it was the car that I'd been driving. I had the sense that there was somebody with me, somebody over my left shoulder. And I went down, I got closer to the action to try to communicate with people, but nobody could hear me. And I watched them load my body into the ambulance and drive away. And then I was shepherded by this kind of entity, in all kindness and benevolence, and I had this feeling like all near-death experiencers report, and like happened in all 3 of mine, of just completely being enfolded in love and in kind of a seamless consciousness or intelligence where my mind didn't have quite the boundaries that it had had. It had sort of expanded into this kind of loving intelligence. And I just felt completely supported and loved and free in many ways. I mean, I can remember having the sensation of feeling kind of relieved to be out of that thing, which
yes,
body, so to speak. But I was kind of shepherded away into what I only remember as being sort of a soft cotton wool cloud bank kind of, and ended up in I don't really remember then what happened for a little while, but I ended up in a very pastoral place, like a park with greenery, and sitting and having a kind of an interview of sorts, kind of like we're talking right now. I don't remember the exact details of it or who it was with, but it seemed like important things were kind of hashed out, or discussed. And then I came to, it was about 18 or 20 hours after the accident, and I had been moved from one hospital to another hospital that had plastic surgery and stuff like that. And I came to, and I went about my life after that. There weren't very many, this was in the early 80s, mid 80s, and there were not very many famous near-death experiencers at all. It wasn't a big deal in those days. I think Dr. Kenneth Ring and Raymond Moody and probably PMH Atwater had their books out, but I didn't know anything about them, and nobody that I knew anything about it. So I just kind of shut up, because when I talked to people about it, they looked at me funny.
I bet.
They tend to do anyway.
But let me ask you a question, Robert, about when this all happened. When you had the accident and you just flew out of your body to the top of the pole, was there any pain or just a boom, shock, and you were out?
Yeah, just a boom shock. Yeah.
Okay, then when you came back in, a lot of people talk about how difficult that is when they're sent back into their body.
That's
you have that experience?
That's my third near-death experience. In the first one, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of the seeing myself in the hospital and re-entering and not wanting to come back. There was none of that. I had this kind of a pastoral interview type thing that I described. And then I don't really remember what happened until I came to again. So that was that. There was really no pain. The thing I try to do, too, with my near-death experiences is that they were varying times. This was about 20 years ago, the first one, and then they were about 5 or 6 years apart, the next two. I try not to elaborate a great deal on them because I know the nature of human memory, right? And I've had recollections that I believe are accurate about the near-death experiences, but when I tell them, I don't really add those on because I don't know where those came from or how accurate they are or whether they're something other than what actually happened. So I've tried to keep them in kind of a crystallized form. I don't remember any pain. I don't remember any additional complications, or any great detail about the afterlife beyond what I've told you about that one. But what I did come back with from that was this sense of being detached from physicality to a degree. It's hard to get the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, after that.
Yes,
and I could never share that. I never found people then I could share that with. And so I went about life with this sort of feeling of being slightly out of kilter with the material world, so to speak, and starting to develop this kind of perspective on life that comes out of that. And that's in the book, How to Get to Heaven. It's like, how do you get to heaven? If what we experience in heaven is this feeling of complete connectedness, of this sort of blissful enfolding into love and this being part of a greater kind of divine consciousness or mind, how do we get to that here? Right?
That's a great question. Yes.
First part of my book is based on that first near-death experience, and it's about perspective and the kind of perspective that you can have if you use your imagination to detach yourself. And there are exercises that you can do, too, to astrally travel, and you've probably had guests who are much better at that sort of thing than I am. I meditate a lot and can do some of it that way. But the idea of detaching your spirit out of your material body and being able to look at everybody as being expressions of consciousness flowing through the form that they're in as a human being, created by their karma, and, products of all of their experiences and all the things that have happened to them. And then you can have this kind of tolerance and acceptance of people in a way that you may not have been able to have before, which I call the lesson of perspective that I got from that out-of-body experience.
Wonderful. You brought back such wisdom, and your book has a lot of really amazing things in it that can help all of us to reach a different level of consciousness. Here is a question from Gorgon from the chat room who wants to know. He says, hello, Robert. Did you feel at peace and free of pain during these experiences?
Yes, completely. Yeah. The third one, which I'll get to in a little bit, was a slightly different kind of experience. I wasn't at peace completely. That was the one where I did not want to come back.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to have to get to that one because, yes, and that was a horrible experience because I read through that in the book and I was horrified. So we're going to definitely have to have you share that with our audience. But, yeah, a lot of people share this sense of overwhelming peace, overwhelming unconditional love, this embrace of energy that feels so beautiful. And, yeah, so it does beg the question, how can we feel that while we're here in the body? It's not easy, is it?
It's not easy. Our bodies are challenging vessels, Being human is not easy. There's a lot of tough stuff that we have to deal with. And I think that's the point of it. That's why we're here, is to experience the challenges.
When you mentioned about learning humility and how we're to learn through the different aspects of it, humility, honesty, and work from that point of view, it makes us stop and think on a day-to-day basis, how much of this do we really utilize?
Right.
It's hard to get to those places, though.
Yeah, and that's, I try to give you kind of a step-by-step. I call them rungs on the ladder to heaven. And these are things like kindness and honesty and humility and forgiveness and compassion and service that sound like principles that we're all familiar with. And it's like, okay, it would be great to do those. And I know that those are great and stuff, but they actually are these very powerful forces in our life. They're actions that you're not going to go to heaven by just sitting around and hoping for it. You have to go out. You got to go out and
wrote it.
If you wait around long enough, you might be able to, but
maybe.
This is about how to go there without really dying. But if you take action in these ways, if you practice absolute loving kindness towards people as much as you possibly can, if you simplify your life in that profound way by being honest all the time, as much as you possibly can, humility is getting all the ideas you had about who you're supposed to be and how you compare and how you compete, all of those material things out of the way. And you look at the people that you've always admired in your life that have this great power, this great personal power. And usually they're very humble people in a way. They're not braggarts or, overly.
Big egos are gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing then with forgiveness, which allows you to, let go of other people's pain that you would carry around. And compassion, which allows you to communicate in a spiritual way with every living thing. And service, which just brings it all into reality, that we're here to serve each other and to fulfill these roles in one another's lives, And that's what everybody in heaven does. What I just described is what it's like there. Right?
Oh.
And so when you're doing that, you start to get a sensation of what heaven feels like in this world.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a very short commercial break. Again, we are speaking with Robert Kopecky. He's the author of a great book, How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. And we've got a lot of things to cover, a lot more paranormal experiences, more near-death experiences, and more questions about how we can feel heaven here on Earth. Robert's got a plan. So Stay tuned, everybody. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio, and we will be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with PK, and you can find PK not only on our website, which is supernaturalgirls.com, but on her own website, patriciakirkman.com. So don't forget to contact her about the first letter of your name if you'd like to know what it means, and also if you'd like your own private numerology reading. PK is available for that. So here we are with our great guest tonight, Robert Kopecky, who's the author of How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. So we're learning a lot tonight about this whole experience, which is so mystical, yet has its own challenges too.
Yes, it does.
So, my goodness, yes. So you've had 3 near-death experiences, as we started to talk about. We just heard about one. What happened with number 2?
The second one was really, it kind of began when my first wife and I traveled around the world for a year and went to a whole bunch of spiritual places. We didn't know we were going to spiritual places, but we explored the Mayan underground and went to all kinds of cathedrals and ruins and looked for tiki in the South Pacific and stuff like that. And when we got back to the United States, to the Bay Area, I got a call, and my cousin was calling because my aunt, who had really helped me when I was a kid, was dying unexpectedly. And I went to her bedside and was with her when she passed away. And I had this sense of her being in the room with us very powerfully after she had left her body, and went on to the rest of my life after that on the backside of this long trip, having this experience, and it really kind of knocked me out of my tracks. I was not really able to engage in what you're normally supposed to do in life. I went back to work and I make art. I'm an artist, and I was doing that. It was fine, but I had kind of come disengaged from the world in a way. And my marriage failed. I ended up leaving and coming to New York City. And I started to live like a totally nocturnal downtown New York lifestyle. Just kind of riotous,
You're Paul. I'm the new Sprintern.
Sprint plus...
Intern. Yeah, clever, right? Looking at getting an amazing iPhone 8?
Yeah, because...
Now you can lease one iPhone 8, get the other one on Sprint to give your second phone to your new friend.
And you get the best price for unlimited.
And now lease one iPhone 8 and get a second one on us. Visit your local Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1 today.
iPhone 8, 64 gigabyte, $29.17 a month. Second iPhone 8 after $29.17 a month. Credit applied within 2 bills. Requires 2 new lines or 1 new and 1 upgrade with 18-month leases. Early termination results in full balance due. Excludes tax subject to credit and 30-day activation restrictions apply.
Nightlife kind of a thing, like very bohemian, which my last name is Bohemian, so maybe that's why. But, the artist's life. And I did that and really kind of burned the candle at both ends. And I suppose it was an overdose would be, this is the least clinically supported near-death experience I had, because I didn't go to the hospital at all for this one. What happened with this one was that I had this kind of toxic reaction, and I fell out on the floor of my apartment, and the entire room filled in with a brilliant white cloud. Again, I was released out of my body. I couldn't feel my body at all, and I was alive in this space. And once again, I had the feeling of a benevolent entity over my left shoulder, who, by the way, I now recognize as being the same benevolent entity as my guardian angel. And I met her in an astral travel in a Reiki session later. And so I now we're good friends now,
You got a name and everything. That's great.
Yeah. But basically, her voice said to me, "Look," and I looked into this cloud, and a screen kind of opened up in the midst of this brilliant white cloud and started playing me scenes from my life, right? So this is a life review kind of thing. They were not the greatest hits. They were not golden moments, the highlights reel. It was not that. They were these almost interactive kind of boxes of time that where they were playing these instances from my life that were sort of emotionally pivotal, or times when I could have been present for something, but I wasn't. I don't remember exactly what they were, again, but I do remember that in some of them, I was doing things that was hurting somebody, but I didn't realize I was doing that. And so I was shown these in a kind of an experiential way where I almost felt like I could reach in and touch things in it. And about, I don't really know exactly how many. I would say 5 or 6 is the feeling that I got from it, of these scenes that were very moving. And then I started to become aware of a voice. And it was the voice of the woman that I lived with at the time in my New York City apartment. And she was crying and screaming and worried. And that started to kind of penetrate this experience. And everything sort of closed down and the cloud started to lift, and I was back in reality in this room, laying on the floor, still unable to really get up or move very much, but back in this world after having had that life review experience. So that was number 2, which has taught me about these moments, about the moment that we're sharing right now, all of us and everybody out there in Facebook streaming land, and it happens right now. I don't feel that different right now than I ever have. The show that I see through my eyes is not a great deal different than it was when I was very young. The vehicle I'm riding around in has changed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But my experience of life is pretty much the same. It's this series of eternal moments, and everything of great value and importance happens in this eternal moment. And so if we can bring presence to bear in our lives, the kind of presence that I was shown in those episodes, the importance of them, then we become much better listeners and much better participators and much better creators, co-creators of our life, in the sense that we can really be where we need to be when we need to be there for each other or for our own life decisions, And so I call that the gift of presence, the lesson of presence.
That's a very powerful lesson. I mean, because what they were showing you, you were seeing whether you were present or not for those events. Is that what you said? And my God, we're so distracted today with so many things pulling us in all different directions. And then, of course, social media, which is so bizarre, and I think is preventing people from having actually a personal connection. I mean, that's a rare thing today. So what a beautiful gift you had to evaluate. Although I'm a little nervous about that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Those places I wasn't present. I'm like, oh my God. But
well, it implies, it implies something profoundly supernatural, and that is that there is an accounting taking place. There's some kind of recording going on of everything all the time, that it's all being accounted for. And like the Hindus call the Akashic record, it's all there, And in fact, in Hindu near-death experiences, and this is something that fascinates me about near-death experiences, because they're culturally exclusive. If you're a Hindu, it's very likely that you will meet Hamraj and have Chitragupta read your stories out of your Akashic record,
Right.
So you actually have those experiences, and there are lots of people who are, not lots, but some particular people that are wonderful mediums of the Akashic realm and can reach into it and basically read your book for you. It's possible. And so all of us are writing this kind of history all the time, creating these packages of karma that we carry from life to life to life, creating them in the moment, in each moment.
Oh my God.
I'm
Now
scared.
I'm really nervous.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions for you, Robert, from the chat room. This is from Colin Perez, who says, were you declared clinically dead during any of these incidents?
I don't know. I don't know if I was. Yeah. The first one, I was which was the one probably most likely for that to have happened.
Car accident?
Yeah. The third one was pretty bad too, but the The first one, I don't know what happened at all. I have no idea because they released me without much ceremony or anything because I didn't have insurance at the time. They called a yellow cab for me and took me in a wheelchair out and put me in the yellow cab and sent me home.
Get out! Can't pay us. Oh my gosh!
In the third one, I had an EMT person say he's back when I came to again, but there was never any kind of clinical documentation of my having officially died, or flatlined kind of thing in any of them,
Wow. Well, here's another question. This is from Oculus. He says, hello, what do you say to people who try to explain your experience away as a simple biological process?
Yeah, I think that's interesting that the brain doesn't die, and I agree. The brain doesn't die. The actions, the functions of the brain carry on. The mind continues. So I'm not as argumentative about that whole idea as some people are. I do believe that our brains are transmitters, receivers, projectors of a field of divine consciousness. And all living things are channeling divine consciousness, which exists in the universe as a field like gravity or electromagnetism or something like that. And so I still remain engaged at some level with my mind in the field of divine consciousness. How much of that is based in my brain, up to what point? I don't know. Nobody can say when that point is, when we switch from this life to an afterlife, or whether we're experiencing aspects of the afterlife. I'm suggesting to you that you can experience aspects of heaven in this life. So what I'm really talking about is becoming extra-dimensional beings and living as extra-dimensional beings. Then the simple physical processes, or in the case of the brain, not so simple physical processes, are a part of being human, of channeling this information through our human forms.
And your book addresses this in a beautiful way also, because you're talking about having a foot in both worlds and balancing. It's a balancing act, right? And the way you describe it and the steps that you give make a lot of sense. And that's why we highly recommend your book to our audience, because it does give those steps. I mean, my guidance showed me that we come from an abstract place, an abstract universal consciousness. And what gets created is what we put our focus on. And so when you have steps like what you've given, with presence and perception, and, it helps to create a focus that supports who you really are, your life's purpose, your soul's purpose, all of the things that you talk about that people really want to get to, but sometimes don't. And then they're stuck with a crappy life review.
We're clearly carrying this stuff with us. We were alive before we're born. We're alive after we die. So we're carrying this package of information that we have created, that we are creating all the time with us. But that's an extra dimensional thing. When people say to me, "Oh, your brain is still working. You didn't actually die." Well, no, thank goodness I didn't actually die. However, I know that it's okay to die, that I feel comfortable with that now. But I'm in human form, and so I want to live, But on the other hand, what I'll say to them sometimes is, well, let's look at where we start from. We're on a planet in outer space, which is an infinite vacuum void full of expanse and stars and who knows how many trillions of galaxies and solar systems and planets and stuff. Okay, so that's where we start from. If that's not strange enough for you, or magical or miraculous enough for you, then what I'm suggesting is probably not going to reach you, You know what I mean? I mean, this is a pretty wild thing that we're involved in here.
It is.
Already, just like it is. It's funny how humans, though, in our human form, we have a tendency to want to make things mundane, what the Buddha called the mundane, right? To designate them in a certain organizable way that seems right to us and seems like that makes sense. Something explains everything. And it's an interesting thing about the paranormal handle, because all the amazing science that we now completely rely on was at one time paranormal. You know, all the great thinkers who suggested quantum physics, or even having a round Earth, you know, the smartest people in the world denied that for hundreds of years, thousands.
They
of
sure
years.
did.
It was
True.
impossible.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely true. Yeah.
the materialists, I think, need to go there. Usually people who have had some kind of profound spiritual experience don't have those materialist questions, you know. But spirituality is anecdotal by its very nature. There's no escaping that. So you can't prove to somebody, you know, it's difficult to prove.
And you talk about that very well in your book, you know, that your experience is your experience, and you're not here to tell everybody else what theirs is going to be like. It's all individual. Well, here's another question from the chat room. This is from Denise, who wants to know, how do you explain when NDE people can describe what was going on with loved ones in different rooms or locations while they are out, in quotes? That's not just biochemical process.
No, and with the first near-death experience that I told you about, where I was up by the top of the telephone pole, I'm looking over into people's yards and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. About 2 weeks later or so, when I had recovered sufficiently, I went back to that neighborhood and I walked around. And I walked around those hedges and I looked into people's yards and stuff, and they were all as I had seen them from the top of the telephone pole. There was no way from where I was crashed that I could have known what was back there as I had seen it. Mm. So it just indicates to me that I was extracorporeal, you know?
You sure were, yeah.
It was out of the bottle, right?
It's what they call also non-local consciousness, is that our consciousness, oops, Robert disappeared. But that is non-local consciousness. It happens when we can take our consciousness out of the body and project it elsewhere. And this is what we've talked about with remote viewers also, PK.
Right. That's so definitely for sure.
Continue this conversation while we're waiting for Robert to get back on the air. But yeah, this non-local consciousness is a very powerful thing. And it's not just astral projection. It is also a part of remote viewing, and the people who are very talented with that, like Joe McMoneagle, who we've had on our show. He's somebody who's a master of being able to use non-local consciousness. I mean, who says that our consciousness has to be stuck right here in our body?
Well, that's the whole thing.
It doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't. And I think one of the things that he was talking about in his book, and that I found that Robert, forgiveness is to set a person free. And if we would forgive ourselves for so many of the things that go on in our life, instead of making it trauma, take each set of circumstances and taking a look at them, not just on this planet, but as he says, on the other side, when you're looking through the looking glass, shall we say, at his near-death experiences. But he came back with some very good points in his book, what was dealing with forgiveness, the source of or sadness tends to visit all of us. We don't have to make it an end all. Being sad sometimes opens the door so other things can step in, and we're more able to see and view and be a part of life. Exactly. I think that's the hardest part. But I love the way that throughout the book it boils down to being of service. And if we can be of service, whether it's through the dream state or through a daily situation, it's just fantastic of how he's been able to see this.
I mean, but I think also I'm going to go back to something you said about forgiveness, because that's a tough one for a lot of people. Because a lot of people think it's about forgiving the other person. It's really not, in my opinion. It's forgiving the self.
I agree.
Because even if you get involved with some like bad situation, and you can blame it on the people that you got involved with. But the bottom line is you made that choice, consciously or unconsciously. And so who do you have to forgive? Yourself. That's the gift of forgiveness, is forgiving yourself. Forget about those other people. They're just actors in your play, and they don't matter. What matters is that you have to forgive yourself for getting into the situation, for choosing those actors and deciding you're going to play it out with them.
New script next time.
Yeah, new script, new actors, better
That's
support
right.
staff.
Well, you take a look at the presence of paying attention. We're all present in what's going on a day-to-day basis. But do we really pay attention to what's taking place?
No, we're so busy thinking about the next thing and the next thing that we got to do and get this done and we get so distracted, and it really does allow us no peace, so that we're not in the moment. We're projecting forward or backward or some other time situation that doesn't bring us peace. So it becomes very important. All the steps that he mentions are very important.
Oh, yes. And I think the exercise of learning to enter into the present, of taking the time to learn how to be present. God,
Yes.
you know, we think about it, we've heard it before, and I think we're all guilty of it, letting it slide by because we'll do it later. Hello
Yes,
there,
so Robert has come back.
Hi.
Yay!
Yeah.
We
I
kept talking
seem to have had some
anyways.
kind of a major technical malfunction and couldn't really sign back into the room, so I had to call you back this way. Sorry.
Well, it's nice that you're here.
Yeah, we're glad
This
you're
is
here.
what counts.
Chatting
Yeah.
away. Here's a question for you, another one from the chat room. This is from Neo, who says, I would like to know if there is any guilt in having so many chances to come back from the experience where others don't seem to.
No, I don't really experience that so much. I mean, I feel quite lucky. Maybe after I tell you the third near-death experience, you'll wonder why I feel lucky, because it was pretty unlucky. But no, I don't really experience that. And you know, I think that has to do with I think you were talking about self-forgiveness a little bit. You know,
Yes.
Forgiveness is one of my rungs on the ladder to heaven, kind of, you know, that you have this unconditional forgiveness for others. And by doing so, really, it's for yourself, too. So when you have these feelings of guilt as though you don't deserve it, or you've gotten something that somebody else should have gotten, that sort of thing, that's all attached to that, to the sense of yourself as not being worthy, or of not comparing well with some kind of ideal, or, you know. And if you're able to let go of those kinds of sensations, those kinds of like sort of strictly human feelings, so to speak, and associate yourself with your spirituality. You know, just think of yourself as this diaphanous, effervescent energy being that is just riding around in this body right now, then things like guilt or envy or pride tend to kind of dissolve. They kind of go away. You know, they don't play such a big role in your life anymore.
That's a relief. I mean, again, you're talking about letting go of this. This is all ego stuff. So letting go of this ego stuff, which is all about comparison. You know, who's better than me? Am I better than them? All of those kinds of egotistical situations.
It is, and what I'm really talking about is getting in touch with this person that you really are. You know,
Yes.
when you, what usually happens is there has to be some kind of death. Now, in my case, I had these three experiences, but I didn't really have a transformative shift, spiritually speaking, until I had a different kind of death years after my third near-death experience.
Oh, my. We're going to have to get to that, Robert, in just a minute. But first, we have to take another very short commercial break. So you are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio, everybody. And please stay tuned. We're going to be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, PK, and our terrific guest tonight, Robert Kopecky, who is the author of a new book, How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying.
I like that part.
Right. I love that title. So, Robert, you had number 3, near-death experience. We need to know what happened.
Okay. Let me back up just a second and just finish the thought that I was having. It was you were talking about the ego, and I was saying had to have this death that was not as traumatic as my other three, but it was a death of the ego. Everything in my life kind of fell apart, right? You know, I lost my second marriage and I lost my job and I was in a strange place at the time. And I just reached a point of complete humility where I didn't have that ego happening anymore. It just wasn't holding much water for me in my life. And so I had this kind of death or transformation at that point too, where I got in touch with my real authentic self, you know? When everything's shot in your life, you're just kind of out there on your own and you realize what's important and what means the most to you and what you can do from that point on. You get out of your own way and you're able to experience life in a whole new way. And that's the death experience. And it's kind of like that, I think, when we go from life to life or when we go through these passages in our lives too. My third one, which still didn't really do it for me for some reason, you know, it seemed to have taken an awful lot for me. But in the third one, I had gotten involved with somebody in Arizona. I was living in New York City, and I was going out to Arizona and spending months at a time there. I had a little house out there, and we were going to get married. And it was Super Bowl Sunday, and she was at home making scones or something, and I was out with some friends watching the Super Bowl. And right after the game, I went out to a payphone, which also dates me, tells you how long ago it was. This college town in Arizona. And when I was on the payphone, this great big kid, we used to call him skinheads, but a big bald-headed kid with sort of Nazi, you know, kind of stuff going on, came up and started to assault me when I was on the phone. And I settled him down. I calmed him down a little bit. But a couple minutes later, when I got back on the phone, he came back and he started really assaulting me. And I did something I will never do again. I punched him right on the chin, and he went back like a sack of poker chips. And I was free, and people applauded, and I ran out of there, and I jumped on my bike to head back home to my fiancée at the time. And I didn't realize that there was a group of these skinheads in a van that drove up along while I was riding my bike. And he hit me across the back of the head with something like a tire iron, maybe.
Oh my God.
Bang, I was out. And it wasn't a couple years later that I found out that they had taken turns stomping and kicking me and stuff.
Oh my God.
Good grief.
It was about 3 hours later or so when I finally came to. But in the meantime, I moved to a different world. It wasn't as light and as friendly or as easy. I still felt kind of conjoined to the material reality that was going on around me. There may have been some sense of being kicked or being stomped on or something like that. I don't know. But I was in a place that was kind of womb-like. It was almost like being underground. It was warm. It was benevolent and comfortable and all of those things that I experienced in my other NDEs. But it was a little bit more adversarial, too, because the entities around me were telling me that I had not done it right and that I had to go back. And I did not want to go back. I had it with the material world as of that moment, kind of, you know. And they insisted, and I started to understand what they meant. And then at a certain point, it felt as though a whole bunch of hands picked me up and kind of pushed me through what seemed to me like a membrane that I kind of popped through. I opened my eyes up, and this was about 3 hours later in real time. I opened my eyes up, and there was an emergency medical worker, the guy I told you about earlier, who's standing over me, and he said, "He's back." And so I came back with this understanding that that we're here for a reason, that there's things we need to do. There's a reason for me being here, for you being here. We are expressing the divine consciousness that we all express through a very particular package, a very particular configuration that intersects with a lot of other people's configurations and plays an important role in this world and in one another's lives. And so it's this gift, the lesson of purpose was what I got from my third one. And so it's presence, it's perspective, presence, and purpose that are the three sections of the book. and the means by which we can come into alignment with that sensation that near-death experiencers have, that I have in this world oftentimes, that has that sort of heavenly sensation of being enfolded into a loving, greater divine consciousness and being able to be of service and have a purpose in my life and really be present for somebody and be able to participate with a lot more energy and focus, you know. So that was the third one. It was my least favorite. Way to go.
What a horrible event. You're really lucky that you didn't die. I mean, it sounds like that group could have easily killed you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, functionally, I feel in this memory of being in another place that I had, in each of them, I felt that I had left this plane of being, that I was not connected to my body anymore. The last one, I felt a little bit more connected to my body. Like I said, I kind of felt, I had a sense of the sensation still. I had no sensation of that at all in the first two, none whatsoever. And so I know that we're extra-dimensional creatures, we're extra-dimensional beings, and that the dimension of materiality is just one that we are participating in right now, that we're just riding around in these bodies. And we have to deal with what they do. That's just the way
Let me ask you, because I'm intrigued by something you said. You said, I did something that I would never do again, in that you punched him and he went back. Why? What would you do differently?
I wouldn't have punched him. You know?
Then there wouldn't have been the problem afterwards. But
I would have avoided death and dismemberment. Paralysis.
Well, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe not, but you know something, what you put into the world is what you get back from the world, and that was demonstrated to me with some force in that instance. When I did that, when I expressed myself that way, it may have seemed right, and there were people that were applauding me, standing around. It's like I had stood up to this guy. But in fact, what I had done was infect my future with karma that was going to come right back at me. And so the world reflects to you the energy that you're putting into it. So when we take part in honesty and humility and kindness and forgiveness and that kind of stuff, we're putting out that kind of energy, and that kind of energy is coming back to us. When we're putting out violence, whether it's justified anger or not, if we're putting out violent energy, we're going to get some kind of violent energy back. It's really tit for tat. It really works that way.
But you'd already
I would not
received
punch the guy.
Yeah, but you had already received the negative energy towards you. What type of problems did you have from the attack that was given you? Broken bones or injuries? What to degree did they last?
Yeah, I had a severe injury. My shoulder was.
You're Paul. I'm the new sprint intern.
Sprint plus.
Intern. Yeah, clever, right? Looking at getting an amazing iPhone 8?
Yeah, because
Now you can lease one iPhone 8, get the other one on Sprint to give your second phone to your new friend.
And you get the best price for unlimited.
And now lease one iPhone 8 and get a second one on us. Visit your local Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1 today.
iPhone 8, 64GB, $29.17 a month. Second iPhone 8 after $29.17 a month. Credit applied within 2 bills. Requires 2 new lines or 1 new and 1 upgrade with 18-month leases. Early termination results in full balance due. Excludes tax subject to credit and third activation restrictions apply.
Down about 12 inches or so.
Oh, my God.
Alongside of my rib cage, and my rib cage was broken up too. So I had to have reconstructive surgery on this whole side. And I'd also apparently hit my head in kind of the same place where I went through that windshield.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it's which might explain a lot. Who knows?
So you were in the hospital for what, 3-4 weeks for this?
For that one, no, I was in the hospital overnight, pretty much for about 18 hours or so. They pulled my shoulder back up, and they trussed it with a kind of a plastic and fabric thing that held my arm in like this, And they sent me home and made me an appointment with a surgeon, and a couple days later,
you were having surgery.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God! I can't believe that. That's like they sent him out again, so quickly. That's amazing to me. I don't like that.
He was bound and determined that he was going to be injured each time, and each time the injury. But where he said about what we offer, what we give by giving out anger, coming back at him, but he didn't give the anger first. It came back to him.
Yeah.
So
it
are we
sounded like
supposed to just say, oh, well, I won't do anything because you were nasty to me?
I know. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. I don't know if I agree that you can't just stand there and let people beat you up, right?
I'm afraid I
well,
would.
I'm back again.
Oh, yay!
I've returned to this life yet again.
Yay!
Third time. Very good.
And I can tell you what I've learned since then, because for years I worked with people in a volunteer role at Beth Israel Hospital, working with people who had difficulties, personality disorders and difficulties. And I discovered that if you're able to put out loving consideration, total compassion and understanding, even if somebody is violent in your face, you can oftentimes completely diffuse them. And in fact, I've had the experience of having guys very similar to the skinhead guy who attacked me, that I have been able to simply confront with love and understanding and an energy of healing connectedness that has diffused whatever anxiety and aggression they had, and actually turned them into people who started crying and thanking me.
Remarkable.
So there really is a extreme power in that kind of humility and loving kindness. Mm-hmm. In fact, the Buddha said that nothing has 1/16 the power of loving kindness. I don't know where he came up with that fraction, but it seems it seems about right to me, because it really does work. And if I had to do it over again, that's how I would deal with it now, would be simply to stand my ground and take this person in, see what his anger was based on, and just project loving kindness towards him, and then run if I had to.
That's a very enlightened stance.
Run like hell.
You just mentioned, run like hell. But again, that takes a tremendous amount of presence and enlightenment to be able to stand there in your own light and not let the fear take over also, because that's a situation that could provoke a lot of fear in most.
But it's available to everybody. It's not something that's really extraordinary or unusual. Everyone has the ability to realize this kind of perspective and presence and purpose that you can bring to bear at a time like that. You know that a person who's angry at you is suffering. You know that you have suffered before, and so you can identify with them, right? You know the power of unconditional love because you've felt it in your life, right? You know that with presence you can engage a person in that place. And that's your real purpose, is to transcend the difficulties of this material life and connect with one another and be of service to one another. So that's what going to heaven without really dying is all about, is about the ability to deal with some of these kinds of situations in this world.
Well, God bless you. You've brought a tremendous amount of light to these situations, and you've given everybody a path to follow. Now, here's a question from Yoga Fan in the chat room, who's saying that they heard you earlier say that you meditate. Do you believe that it helps you better process what you are experiencing during these near-death events?
Well, during the near-death experiences, I was not so conscious before or after that I was able to bring anything from my regular life into that. And I was not a meditator at the time of those events at all. it was a number of years after my third one, when I had this kind of ego death that I described to you before, when I realized I had to change everything about my life. And I started then on a spiritual path, and I began meditating seriously and discovered what meditation can really do for us. And one of the main things meditation can do for us is it enables us to hear that ego voice inside of our head and to objectify it so that we don't have to own it. We don't have to be that. You know, when I listen to the crazy guy inside of my voice, inside of my head that's telling me how comparing and judging and, you know, going off about fearful things and stuff, I realize that I can move away from that. Meditation teaches you that you can become a witness, just a simple witness to your thoughts, that you don't have to be your thoughts themselves. And so it brings an awful lot to my experience of life now that I couldn't have had before. And in fact, meditation gives me a sense of those sensations that I had in heaven, so to speak, that feeling of divine connectedness, of being enfolded into a loving matrix of potential, of spiritual potential in this world and beyond. That's pretty seamless and that really directs my life now. So. Meditation, I do have an entire chapter on it in the book because it's one of the only ways that I've been able to really touch on those heavenly experiences, that kind of realm of being again. You know?
Yeah, that's, I mean, again, it's all in the book, because somebody was asking, how can I get to heaven without really dying? Well, if you read the book, you will see all of the steps that Robert is recommending. And again, what's so great here is, Robert, you've based this on real experience. This is your own experience, and you're passing on the wisdom that you've learned to all of our audience tonight and the readers of your book. Now, here's another question. This is from Sarah Popovich, who says, do you believe all creatures of God, including our pets, can go through a near-death experience?
Wow, I have never thought about that, Sarah. That's a great question. I'm a vegetarian and an animal rights person and stuff, absolutely, and believe that animals are much more intelligent than we give them credit for, and deeply perceptive at levels that we can't even imagine because of the constraints of our own, physical human form. But whether they are capable of that, I'm not really sure. I couldn't really tell you. I don't know how animals think. I wish I did. My wife is an animal communicator, and so I get
Is she? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she's fantastic too. Sue Pike, the animal talker, is her name. And she does really amazing work that is constant evidence of this kind of transpersonal communication that's available to us, this extrasensory communication that we're all capable of. And lots of people experience it with their pets already, Oh,
yes.
I've had people laugh. I've seen people laugh at my wife and then witness them talking to their dogs later, But I can only imagine that the depth of experience, and even on a spiritual level, is much more profound and complex with animals than the human ego wants to give them credit for. I think in your heart you know that. And in fact, I think that I would say they do have those experiences, Sarah. That would be what I feel in my heart is true.
Yes. Yeah, a great answer. Great answer.
Beautiful.
And here's a question from Catherine. I would love to have just one experience. And some people have multiple ones, like you, Robert. Why is that?
Don't do it the way I did it, Catherine. Do not do this at home.
Bruises hurt, huh?
Don't try this at home.
Just read the book or listen to the interview again or something. But it's and meditate. Practice these principles in your life. Live a spiritual life. Realize that you are an effervescent energy being that is riding around in a human body, that we're in these forms for a reason, and that they do certain things that we have to deal with.
Yes.
And then you really don't need to have that happen to you. You know, I know it sounds kind of romantic and stuff, but I think that I would rather have not had them. I know that sounds strange, but
no, it doesn't.
I think I probably would rather have
what you've been
avoided them.
through. My goodness me. Yes. I mean, this is. I don't know. You've been through a lot. There's no question. But you've been kind enough to share what you've learned with all of us, which is a great gift. Here's another question. This will be our last question for the night from I Believe, who says, so are you saying that we can slip in and out of dimensions, which is the same experience we go through in near-death experiences? Is that for an interesting question?
I believe I don't know for certain whether we can do that or not. I think we can to a degree. I do think that we are extra-dimensional entities. We're bound to this particular material realm, but there's a real interesting thing going on in Switzerland, the Blue Brain Project, where they're reconstructing a brain digitally, right? They're trying to create a computer model for a brain. And they brought in this bit of mathematics called algebraic topology. And the instant they did that, what they had thought of as being three-dimensional activity in the brain between the neurons and receptors and all that, suddenly became 11 dimensions.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my
goodness.
I believe that we are connected to multiple dimensions.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to pass along to people is an ability to witness this life as a singular dimension that you are not completely bound to. You are free of it in many respects. You're free to experience this dimension of light and unconditional love and this matrix of profound potential, where anything can happen based on your imagination and focus and intention, that kind of stuff. And to really walk around this life with a slightly extra-dimensional look at things. Now, people might look at you a little funny, but...
Well...
like, are you in another dimension right now, Bob? Well... Sort of.
We're all in and out of them, that's for sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and I do think we are having access to these dimensions, and more so than ever before as the veil gets thinner and thinner around us. So, but certainly, Robert, your adventures are incredible. Just incredible. Yes, and I mean, let's face it, you could have gone either way with this. You could have been very bitter, about your early childhood and how difficult it was. You could have been very resentful over the fact that you had a car accident and had to recover from that. But you took the high road each and every time. And
well, I guess if you hit me in the head hard enough a few times, I'll end up making the right choices for a change, right? No, but what I would like to pass on to people is that right now you might think there are all kinds of things that are really important in your life and that are difficult and dramatic, and you don't know how you're going to deal with them. But if you just step aside from that for a moment and look at yourself in this moment, and realize this kind of effervescence and the light that's coming into your eyes and the fact that we're on a planet in outer space and all the potential and possibilities and how well you are actually, The Native Americans say if you're getting tired rowing upstream, turn around. And it's just, the whole thing is carrying you in a way that you may not have realized you're being carried. And when you have faith in that, everything begins to change. Everything becomes possible.
That's a great note to end on, Robert. We can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. And again, you can find Robert at his website, robertkopecky.com. And again, the great book that he just wrote, which is How to Get to Heaven Without Really Dying. Thank you, Robert. We'll be back next week, everybody. We have the New York shaman joining us. Itzhak is back. He's got all kinds of things to tell us, and we can't wait to hear from him. So in the meantime, everybody, we will see you on the Blue Highway.
Thanks, you guys.
Good night.